Brilliant. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this webinar on the future of the Cyphers Bowls Club and 62 Kings Hall Road. My name is Oliver Deeds, and I'll be chairing the session this evening, this webinar. Thank you for joining us on what is in London, obviously a sweltering night. Hope you're all in the call. This is the second of two webinar sessions that we're holding this week on this particular project. Tonight, we're going to have a presentation from the project team on the proposals for around about 20 minutes or so, which will be followed by a Q&A session. As you probably just noted, we are recording the session tonight, and a copy of it will be uploaded to the project website, which is kingshallroadconsultation.co.uk. From tomorrow, a copy of the information boards and a feedback form will be available on the site, so you can submit your comments. Tonight, we will be taking questions from attendees, and you can submit your questions by using the Q&A panel at the bottom of your screen. And depending on the number of questions we have this evening, we're probably likely to finish at around about 8 o'clock. So I'm going to move on quickly to the next slide. I think that's all the housekeeping, and then get everybody just to very quickly introduce themselves in no particular order. Bradley, do you want to just say a little bit about yourself and Fenny's in the first instance?
Yep. Hi there. Good evening, everyone. Yeah, my name is Bradley Fenn. I'm representing Fenny's Nurseries this evening, who are bringing forward the scheme. We currently have 11 sites across South London, which offer over 1,000 places early years education to children across South London.
Brilliant. And then I'll hand over to you, Henry.
Hi everyone, I'm Henry Jones. I'm a senior architect at Lipton Plants Architects, who are the architects on the scheme. I'm sort of running the job, and so yeah, we're sort of taking care of most of the design aspects, and we've done award-winning nursery designs in the past, and we do lots of housing, so we're very suited to this sort of scheme.
Brilliant, thank you very much, Henry, and last but not least, Mark.
Good evening, everybody. Mark Batchelor. I'm Planning Director at Boyer, with the planning consultants advising Fenny's on this case. I've worked in consultancy for around 20 years now, 10 of which I've spent working in consultancy in the London Borough of Bromley itself, which coincidentally is where I was born and lived for about 30 years. So it's an area I know very, very well. Have a lot of friends and family in the area, so excited to present the scheme to you this evening.
Brilliant. Okay, Mark. Well, thank you very much for those introductions, chaps. And we are going to have about 20 minutes for presentation now. I can see a question's already been fired its way in, so we will take those after the presentation has finished. So I'm going to hand back to Henry, who's going to take you through the start of the presentation. Henry, over to you.
Sure. So just first a little bit about the history of the area. We sort of take we do a lot of research into the history of any site that we look at. So I thought it'd be interesting to share this as part of the presentation. So if you look at these three historic maps, they sort of show a progression of the area surrounding the site and Kings Hall Road. So originally it was sort of a very agricultural area. There was some country estates and manor houses, and it was very sort of very rural. And then later in the sort of late 19th century, a lot of the agriculture became, instead of producing food and food products, they became pleasure grounds for the sort of upper classes, and people would use it as a retreat from their houses in the city. They'd have a sort of manor house and then formal garden, say, behind that, and then beyond that would be these pleasure grounds, which are which were originally agriculture, but then just for sort of with follies and for walking, etc. And then the map on the right hand side there just shows how it's then developed into what it is today. So some of these original manor houses still exist. One of them, Kent House, was a nursing home, became a private hotel, eventually got demolished, but there are others that still exist. But so and then now there's just lots of housing along the streets, and that just shows a bit of the progression of the area, to give an overview. But, yeah. So looking at the street as it is today, along Kings Hall Road, the predominant building typology are these pairs of semi-detached houses, which all have very similar sort of frontage to the street, which is this sort of double gable end walls with the pitched roofs. And then at the same time, there are a few denser housing developments, one of which is directly next to the main site we're looking at, which is the image in the bottom right of those 4 photographs. So they're sort of more 3 stories plus a roof. And you'll see later in the presentation, we've taken cues from this context, both for the form of these semi-detached houses and then the sort of height and density of the residential that's sitting next to our site. And then we've also taken cues from the materials, so to create something that's very much contextual within its site. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Over to you, Mark.
I'll run through the 2 sites very briefly. I'm sure everyone's broadly familiar with them, but for those who may not be, site A is 62 Kings Hall Road, and that's the existing day nursery site that Fenny's operating. You can see that on the aerial image to the left with the yellow dashed outline. Originally obviously built as a single house, part of a pair of semi-detached houses, I expect, since converted to a day nursery with a capacity for 73 children. Site B is the former Cyphers Bowls Club. You can see a short distance down the road to the east. The site has the former bowls green to the front and the building to the rear, and quite a large swathe of hard standing running alongside the site's western boundary and across around the top of the building you can see there. The Bowls Club closed in, I think, around April 2019 as a result of dwindling memberships and rising maintenance costs given the age and condition of the building. The site was then marketed by Styles Harold Williams for approximately 6 months. I think the only interested parties who made offers on the site were either day nursery operators or residential developers. And obviously, Fenny secured the site and are bringing forward the proposals for you to look at this evening.
That's me. So if I just talk through the main approach we've taken in this proposal. So those 2 sites, the existing Fenny's site, which is on one half of one of these semi-detached housing typologies along the road, we're looking to move that to a purpose-built new nursery, increasing onto the site B, which will be a bigger nursery for 150 pupils, as opposed to around 73, I think, is in the current Fenny's site. So we develop a nursery at the rear of the site, sort of away from the residential area. It's got its own access down the side there, which is an existing access road. And then at the front, we're looking to develop some new housing to sort of complete that street frontage and to provide some much needed new homes in the area. And it's sort of, everything's designed to sort of sit within this line of trees that surrounds the site, so as to not impact on the surrounding green spaces and sort of present itself to the street instead. So what's currently a sort of derelict site will become a sort of nice new piece of street frontage along the road. And then we've obviously got this new purpose-built nursery to the rear. And there's another slide on environmental design later, but just touch on it now that everything's also designed to be, with the latest building materials, well insulated, etc., and also green roofs to promote biodiversity and good public realm and good spaces for everyone within the site. And then again, there's another slide about access, so I won't dwell on that here. So these are just a couple of views of that front residential building I was talking about. So if you think back to the description of the local street and the housing types, the building types along the street, you'll see we've taken cues from these semi-detached housing forms with the pitched gable ends, and then it's sort of brought up to the scale of that residential building next door to us, to give a sort of contemporary but very contextual building that will provide some very good flats with good spaces. Every flat will have its own outdoor space, private outdoor space, and there's a communal outdoor space, and it will all be fully serviced as required by the planning policies of the area, which Mark may go into later. Next slide, and then the nursery at the rear. So this is a vast improvement on the current nursery, which is currently sitting within a building that used to be a house. So this is completely purpose built for a nursery. I can briefly describe how the design works. If you look at the bottom left image, there's sort of 4 volumes which surround the central circulation space. That volume in the bottom middle is the sort of entrance and admin area, and then the other 3 are nursery spaces, and each one for a particular type of pupil in the nursery. So from babies, toddlers to preschool, and they each have their own space, and they each have their own outdoor space, and each of the outdoor spaces is separate from the other, to avoid this sort of big congregation of 150 children in one space. So it's all very purpose built and specially designed for its purpose, which is a big improvement from the current nursery facility.
Just touching on a couple of technical points, sorry, if you can, just on the new nursery. What we've done is, as part of the process of designing this scheme, we've undertaken some primary research, looking at the vacancies that exist, the space that exists within existing nurseries in the surrounding area. And most of the local nurseries are either fallen with waiting lists or are close to capacity for the last academic year just gone and the one upcoming. In addition to that, we've looked at the childcare sufficiency data that the London Borough of Bromley published. That was back in 2017, and that data showed a deficit of 119 early years nursery places in this part of the borough. In addition to that, we've done some further work with the education department at the borough, and that shows that, again, in this specific area, there's probably only about 0.55 nursery places per child available. So it shows there's a real deficit and inadequacy of supply, and a need, therefore, to provide new nursery places in the area. So that sort of supports the scale of the nursery and what it is we're looking to do.
So yeah, as I touched on earlier, this sustainability environmental design remains at the heart of all the design work we're doing here. So it'll be very highly insulated walls, new glazing with very good thermal and acoustic values to them. We'll also look to incorporate renewable energy technologies that are appropriate to the site. And yeah, all the sort of latest products and materials that are available, such as energy efficient lighting. And then at the same time, we're promoting biodiversity on the site. So the nursery, especially, we're proposing a sort of extensive green roof, which will, even though we're building on top of that land, it will, the sort of footprint of the building promotes biodiversity through its roof, and this also prevents overheating and stops stormwater runoff into the local drains. So yeah, this slide's just to reinforce that we are keeping environmental design very, very seriously through the project.
I think that's, oh, sorry, Ollie. Yeah, this picks up on a planning policy point as well, a requirement for developments to be lean, clean and green. So we're working through those policy objectives closely with energy advisors. And what we'll do when we submit the planning application is we'll have an energy assessment submitted with both applications. So the application for the Cyphers Bowls Club site and for number 62. And that will provide full detail on exactly what renewable energy we're proposing to include within the design, perhaps some commentary on the construction methods itself, and we'll really explain how we're going to achieve those policy objectives.
This slide shows a site plan of the proposal on site B, also highlighting the different access routes that we have into the proposal. So I take you through these, that you'll see the blue and yellow, so the blue arrows on the left-hand side show the vehicle access to the nursery at the rear. So you'll see it's got its own road, which already exists, an entrance. There's a sort of turning point at the back that can be used for drop-off and deliveries. There's a small amount of staff parking, although the Fennies do not, that they have a policy of their staff not driving to work, and so that there shouldn't be need for much parking at all. And then also completely separate from the residential is the yellow line, which is the pedestrian and cycle access to the nursery. And the statistics from Fenni's existing nurseries show that the vast majority of parents drop off their children on foot or by bicycle rather than by car, on their sort of usually on their way into commuting into the city. So, and then you'll see that the access throughout the site has been to make sure that it's self-sustainable with its access, in that it doesn't affect any sites next to it, or doesn't put pressure on any of the sites next to it. But also within it, the nursery and residential are kept completely separate. So if you look at the pink arrows, there's a side access road through to a private residential car park at the back, which also includes bike storage. And then the inhabitants of this building can enter on the front or the rear, front from the street or from the rear. And at the same time, if you think about how this may be constructed, how the buildings are going to be built, it's a big site. It's got its own existing access, so you will have wheel washing facilities for trucks going in and out of the site. So it shouldn't have we shouldn't have to do any road closure or anything like that, because everything can be contained from within the site, and to limit the impact it will have on the surrounding area.
From a technical perspective, what we'll do is we've given sort of extensive early consideration to the highways impacts of the development, both during the construction phase and the operational phase of development itself. What we'll do as part of the application, we'll submit a construction logistics and management plan, which will fully detail how it is we're proposing to undertake the construction works themselves, and how the site will be serviced. It will look at things like delivery routes, operational hours on the building site itself, just so everyone can fully appreciate and understand how we're looking to undertake the works, and can comment on those. And that's part of an ongoing conversation, negotiation with the London Borough of Bromley. And if permissions granted for the development, we will be required to comply with the terms of that logistics plan through the planning conditions that would be imposed on any consent. In terms of the details of the amount of parking itself, planning policy now in the new London plan sets maximum parking standards, and the emphasis very much is on encouraging the use of sustainable modes of transport, i.e. walking, cycling or public transport, in preference to ownership and use of cars. So policy really does push down the importance of providing car parking on site, and so we have to work within those policy parameters as we prepare the application.
So just to briefly go through the site A, which is where the current nursery is that we're moving from. So this was originally a residential building. So the idea is to restore it back to being a residential building. If you sort of look at the form of it, it was originally half of a pair of semi-detached houses, of which at some point in time one of them's been sliced off to provide a car park for this housing development to the right-hand side of it. If you look at that image in the center there, we're looking to create 4 new flats in this building, and there's an outbuilding. If you look, it's in the center of the image. At the rear of the garden, there's an existing outbuilding which is currently used as one of the nursery spaces. This can be used as a sort of home working facility or perhaps a gym for the residents. So just emphasising that we'll be creating high quality homes with lots of good facilities in this building that the nursery is coming out of.
And then this final slide, just on the right-hand side there, you can see an indicative timeline. And obviously we are on the first blue spot there, summer 21, consultation with the London Borough of Bromley, with local residents, etc. We're aiming to submit a planning application in the autumn of this year. The earliest we expect that works could commence on site is the early part of 2022, and expect the nursery could be completed towards the end of next year. Obviously that's only very indicative at this stage, and time will tell whether that timetable is actually met, but that's kind of our best guess where we are at the moment.
Okay, thanks all. I think that's the end of the presentation now, and we've had about 30 questions submitted, so I think let's get straight to it. I will stop sharing my screen temporarily, and of course if we need to revert back to a particular slide we can. I'm going to take them in the order that they came in the first instance, and where we do pick up issues and items and they've been answered, I'll try to group questions together. But in the first instance, first question in, Kate, how many trees will be cut down for the new development? What will be replanted, mature trees or new trees that will take years to provide the same environmental benefit as the current trees? So can we have an answer on how many trees are going to be cut down as part of the development and what's going to be retained? Mark, I might hand that over to you first, but of course, Henry, feel free to come in as well.
Yeah, of course. Thanks very much for the question. We're looking to minimise impact on trees. We're trying to develop within the existing landscape. So we've had an arboricultural survey undertaken. We're going through the process now of calculating root protection areas to protect as many of the site trees as possible, especially those along the important eastern boundary to the site and around the top to the north. As part of the planning application, the arboricultural survey will be submitted for consideration by the tree officer at Bromley Council. And alongside that, we'll also have a landscaping strategy submitted that will detail exactly what new mitigation planting is being proposed in terms of new trees across the frontage, down the side of the site, etc.
Okay, thank you very much. And of course, if there are any of these, I think we as a team are committing to, if there are any of these questions that remain unanswered from this particular session, we will make sure that there's an FAQ put up on to the site and distributed to everybody that attends. Moving on, what will the impact be on traffic on Kings Hall Road of these proposals? How will the cars enter the nursery site and leave, and where will the cars park? And I think linked to that, actually, there was a question around the access road existing at the moment. Is there a proposal to make that two-way? Because it's not currently. So could we have an answer on the impact in terms of Kingsville Road in the first instance, and then how are cars entering and leaving the site at the nursery? I can probably share my screen again.
Yeah, so in terms of Kings Hall Road, we've got a transport consultant who has been instructed and is advising in respect of highways matters, and unfortunately he's not able to be here this evening. But we were looking at sort of modelling highways, the highway along Kings Hall Road, modelling traffic flows and looking at the development itself, and using the software that highways consultants have access to. They can model the likely trip generation of both the nursery element and the residential element of the scheme, and that will provide a model that shows the actual impact on movements along Kings Hall Road. So all of this is in hand. I'm afraid I can't be any more articulate than that, really, in terms of answering that question specifically, but it's something we are looking at, and very happy to engage further beyond this evening and have those conversations with the transport consultant present, just to give some clarity around those questions. That's absolutely fine.
I think that would be quite useful, because quite a lot of the questions are relating to transport that are coming through, understandably. So
of course,
some of the
yeah.
things that we'll be
just
looking
another
at.
point on that.
Yeah,
sorry, just another point. Obviously, the existing nursery, it barely provides drop-off spaces at the moment. There's about room for 1 or 2 cars maximum on the existing site, whereas this proposed site will take all the, if any, traffic off the road and into a private double lane road, which obviously won't cause any traffic to the main Kings Hall Road. So it will actually direct it off and make it safer for obviously pedestrians, local residents, and obviously parents dropping off at the nursery.
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Then I think just a quick one on parking again, and this is relating to the existing site for the proposed flats at the existing site. What will be the provision there, and also is there a final provision? And maybe Mark, you've already said no, there's work still happening on this, but for the residential element on the new site, have we got a figure in terms of parking on that moving forwards? So have we got a figure on parking for this site, and have we got a parking figure for the residential on this site, wherever that?
So I think in terms of 62, I think there is, and actually Bradley might know this better. I think there's one parking space, perhaps two, on the frontage that we would propose to retain and reuse as part of the development at 62. So sort of two spaces for the 4 flats that would be proposed. But again, I'm not going to give an absolute commitment to that at this stage because I don't have the drawing right in front of me. But that's again something we're looking at and working with the Highways Authority on that point. In terms of the new residential development at the former Bowls Club site, there's a new parking area to the rear of the building. I think it's on the highways plan, actually. Ollie, it might be helpful just to bring that up. Yeah, there we are. So you can see to the right hand side, shaded pink, is the residential parking area for the new residential development, and I think there's a couple of spaces to the front of the building as well. So again, it's probably around 50% of the units will have a parking space, which is in line with the maximum standards set out in the London Plan Policy.
All right, thanks, Mark. Thanks for the answer on that one. On a different tack, what makes you say that the bowling club is a magnet for antisocial behaviour? There has been one incident of antisocial behaviour. Perhaps, Mark, I think that you might have expressed that as a sentiment. Bradley, you guys obviously own the site. Is this something that that it's been problematic?
I think possibly Bradley's best place to answer that, just in terms of his first-hand knowledge of the building and the condition he found it in when they secured it.
Yeah, so obviously when we first took over the site, it was occupied by squatters, and there'd been a lot of rubbish dumped around the site. So we've cleared all of that up. We've secured the site, put electronic shutters on all the entrances, made good any leaking roofs and damaged areas. And we're active in the area. We're currently using the site as a storage unit. But yeah, it wasn't in great use. So we've sort of tidied it up, and we're obviously monitoring it regularly.
Okay. Thank you very much. Again, changing tack slightly. Mark, one for you, I suspect. What pre-application discussions have you had with Bromley so far, and how have they gone?
Yeah, so we've had a first full pre-application exercise with officers at Bromley Council. The second one has recently been submitted, showing the scheme that we're presenting this evening. The conversations with the officers have been very constructive and very helpful, actually. The officers have been particularly useful in pointing us in the direction of quite where the educational need will lie and justifying that. Officers fully understand and acknowledge the situation that exists in Bromley at the moment with the lack of a 5-year housing land supply, and they understand, but on the basis of recent appeal decisions and reports that officers themselves have written to committee, the amount of weight that has to be given to housing development proposals in the borough, particularly those developments that include a significant proportion of affordable housing, such as that we're proposing here. So it's part of an ongoing process of dialogue, but a very constructive one so far.
And then I suppose linked to that, we've had a question about the 2015 application for the Cyphers site, which was refused. Our correspondent says one of the reasons given was it was planned over development with substandard spatial relationships to existing dwellings in the locality. The application was for 4 houses. How many flats, if anything, they can cram on? What has changed in 6 years?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fair to say that we've gone through a much more rigorous and comprehensive design process. Henry spoke to it earlier on, where he was talking about the contextual analysis that we've undertaken, looking at the size of plots and then taking that those proportions and those metrics and using them to help inform the scale of the building that would be appropriate on our site, looking at the scale and the height of the block of flats immediately next door, and using that to guide us in terms of what we're doing. So I think that the design has significantly moved on, and rather than looking at a scheme for 4 houses, looking at actually a scheme for 1 and 2 bedroom units, which really does hit exactly where Bromley's housing need lies. The evidence in Bromley is very strongly that there's a significant shortage of 1 and 2 bedroom units, and so we're focusing our proposals around that to meet that need. And the other important point, I'll come back to it, is that at the time of the 2015 planning application, Bromley did have a 5-year supply of housing land, and at the moment they don't. Housing land supply in the borough is around 3.2, 3.3 years, so a very long way short of the 5-year minimum that government requires them to achieve, and that significantly alters the approach that will be taken in terms of assessing an application for development at the site.
And again, sorry, I feel like I'm sort of drilling you with questions, but a lot of these are planning related for understandable reasons. What are the affordable housing requirements from Bromley in terms of tenure and mix?
So the policy position in Bromley is a requirement for 35% affordable housing on sites, and the specific tenure mix requirement is 60% affordable rent and 40% intermediate, which would often be a shared ownership product. My experience is that when you're looking at a scheme of this kind of size, 20 units, it's very difficult to find a housing association who will take on 35% of such a small number, given the management complexities. And so very often in this situation, what happens is, although a scheme could in principle support affordable housing delivery, it turns into a cash contribution instead, with the site being sold as a 100% market. So what we are looking at and discussing with officers is whether we could provide 50% of the development as affordable housing, but within a different tenure. So looking at things like discount market rent, so that we can actually deliver the affordable housing as part of the scheme. I think it's fair to say Bromley's track record on delivery of affordable housing is pretty woeful. And so something that we're really looking at very seriously is how we can actually ensure that affordable housing is genuinely delivered through this development, rather than sort of cash going into a pot at the borough to be allocated to schemes elsewhere.
Okay, thank you very much. On a different note, Henry, I'll bring you in on this question. Are there any reasons why the nursery and residential building cannot be swapped in their position, i.e. with the nursery on the street and the residential in the back? Is that an option you looked at?
Yeah, so we've explored lots of design options when sort of coming to what we've presented today. It wasn't just a first stab. So yeah, we've considered it. There were various reasons why it was better to have the residential at the front. One of which is you sort of need 24/7 access to the flats, and the councils prefer to have the access to any residential development to be from the street and to have a sort of clear entrance, and you wouldn't want to be constantly walking past or driving past a nursery building to get to your flat or to your block of flats. So I think whereas to access a nursery and past a residential building, there's not really a problem with that, as long as you address the overlooking and sort of privacy issues, which we have. So yeah, and then at the same time, it was really about creating this street frontage and completing the street scene, which is currently there's just you get a good rhythm of the semi-detached houses. There's the apartment block next to us, and then at the moment there's a sort of overgrown mess. So we just think that was the opportunity to complete that street scene and make the street more attractive as an urban space, really. And then I guess the other reason to put the nursery at the back, it sort of gives it more privacy and security, which is very important for a nursery. So yeah, there's lots of reasons why you could do either, but there are a lot more reasons to have it in its current configuration, with the residential at the front and the nursery at the back.
Okay, great, thank you very much. I'm going to ask a question, Bradley. Can I bring you in on this particular one? What proportion and absolute number of current Finney's Nursery customers currently travel to the Kings Hall Road nursery by car? think we mentioned a survey in there, so you've got a maybe that was a staff survey as opposed to a customer survey. But have you got ideas around that in terms of the data?
Yeah, so I don't have a final number, but basically we did a planning application on another site in Bromley over the other side near our site in Blythe Road, where we undertook a survey of our parents and staff at our site in Blythe Road and our site in Kings Hall as to their means of transport to and from the site. Around 60% of parents and staff travel by foot, either using public transport or actually walking directly to the site, because in terms of Kings Hall specifically, our site there, the majority of our parents are actually within a 3-kilometre radius. So that's easily accessible for them to walk to the site. And in terms of driving, the survey came back as saying about 20% of parents and staff travel by car. But that's obviously across the 2 sites. So I don't have a definitive figure, unfortunately.
Mark, another one for you again. It's a highways improvement. Do you think that the council are likely to propose highways improvements like crossings or junction improvements as part of this application? Is that going to be something they're going to look for part of maybe Spec 106 there, I'll say?
Yeah, so far, no. Doesn't mean to say, of course, that highways officers might discuss that with us during the course of this next pre-application inquiry, or indeed during the course of the planning application in the future. It's a conversation we're very happy to have with highways officers if it's considered necessary, and if so, then it would be secured through a legal agreement attached to the planning to the planning permission. Yeah.
Okay. It's quite lengthy. There's this one. This was from a KHR parent at Fenny's. There's a few questions involved in here. One of them, the first one, is how long will the building work, all of it, take? When is it proposed to start? I think I'll bring up again the boards, because I think that was on the last board, and that question may have been asked just before we got through that. But Mark, do you just want to talk to that very quickly again?
Yeah, of course. So the timeline's on the right there, and I think the earliest date that we anticipate that works can begin on site is some point early in 2022, with the nursery likely to be completed later that year. Henry, you may have a better idea about the time it will take to construct the residential element alongside that.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to be specific at this point because we don't have an approved scheme yet for a start, and also, but the scheme that we're looking at the moment, yeah, we'd expect it to take anything from 9 months to a year, or perhaps slightly more. But it really depends on a lot of factors. But it's somewhere in that region, I would say.
And presumably that'll be set out in the planning documentation as well, in terms of rough timescales. And linked to that, actually, time restrictions on the work to be undertaken. Mark, again, this might be one for you. General restrictions that are placed on schemes in Bromley for when construction work can take place?
Yeah, so again, this will be set out in the construction management plan that we submit with the application, and it will be during typical working hours. Considerate contractor regulations will apply, and will abide by those. So I think general working hours around sort of 8:30 to 5:30 on a weekday, and Saturday mornings, but no work on a Sunday or bank holiday is usually what's agreed within that.
Okay. And then Bradley, one for you. How large will the new room sizes be in the nursery room? The parent says the current class sizes in the existing property are at a nice level. So are they going to be made bigger at this new nursery?
So yes, yeah, they will be slightly bigger. But all of the rooms are set out with more than enough equipment and more enough staff levels in order to cater for the number of children. So it would never inhibit the provision that we actually provide. And everything is scaled to the quantity of staff, children, all of that sort of equipment, play equipment, and all of it's not just to drop your kid off and they run wild. They're all set up into activities in managed groups with their key staff members. So it doesn't tend to make a difference. We have other sites that have up to 40 children in a room, and that's all managed very well. And the parents at those sites are all very happy as well.
Okay. We're reverting back a little bit to a question on trees, but in terms of trees, please confirm that the hedge and trees along the Bowls entrance will be retained. Again, Henry, Mark, feel free to come in on that one. So point that out to me on the map, chaps. It's
Yeah.
What was the question? Sorry, I didn't see that.
In terms of trees, please confirm that the hedge and trees along the Bowls entrance will be retained.
Yes, I think that's at the bottom right-hand corner of the site plan that we can see there. And yes, I think a lot of it is actually not on our side anyway, so we wouldn't be able to touch it. And then defining the root protection areas so that those trees and the key landscape features can be retained. So absolutely, that's the intention.
Okay. Just try to find some questions on items that haven't already been covered, so bear with me. Will the existing team at the KHR management and room staff all be kept? Bradley, that's just one that I think our concerned parent was submitting.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, we always look to develop and train our staff, and by moving them into a purpose-built nursery, it'll give them a much better facility in order to better their training as practitioners and further educate the children.
Okay, brilliant. Just a question here from James. Just will we get to see the plans, the next iteration of the plans? Will residents get to see the plans, and will they be consulted on them before they are submitted? So, Mark, just give an indication in terms of timeframes. Are we able to come back and show people what the next iteration of these plans are?
Yeah, so I think what the process that we anticipate at the moment is obviously to consult on the scheme that we're presenting this evening. The pre-application exercise is ongoing with the London Borough of Bromley, and after that the planning application will be submitted. So I expect what will happen is that the next version of the scheme, so to speak, will be the one that gets submitted as part of the planning application, and then obviously residents will be consulted by the London Borough of Bromley following submission of the application, and they'll be invited to submit comments at that point in time as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And then when will the traffic consultation take place? I'm not sure what that's in reference to, although it might be proposals to extend the 20-mile-per-hour speed limit around the area. There's an upcoming traffic consultation on. If that individual might be able to clarify that, that would be helpful. But if
I think a similar comment came up yesterday, actually, around the 20-mile-per-hour limit, and it's obviously nothing that we have specific control over, and actually hasn't been raised during the pre-application discussions with the London Borough of Bromley and the highways officers. But of course, we are, as we said a while ago, very happy to continue to have, to engage with residents around highways matters and anything else over the coming days, weeks, and months. So yeah, if there's some questions to be answered, then we can get our transport consultant involved in that. That's no problem.
Yeah, there have been a couple of questions about are there any proposals to ask the extension of the 20-mile-per-hour limit. So I think that's one that we should pick up and revert back on.
Definitely.
The Phoenix Flyer states that the proposal will contribute positively to the local community. For locals not using the nursery, what positive impact will the development have on the community? I'll open that one to the floor.
I mean, I suppose from the community benefit side of things, I mean, obviously there's significant educational benefit, employment benefits arising from the scheme, and then significant housing benefits as well. Delivery of 1 and 2 bedroom units across both sites. Hopefully, delivery of around 50% affordable housing, giving people access to sort of genuinely affordable accommodation in the borough, which is a borough with some of the highest average house prices in the whole of London. So there's some real tangible benefits coming through the scheme as a result of what it is we're looking to do. But as part of the planning application, what we'll do is we'll submit a full schedule of all the benefits, just so people can really understand what it is that the scheme's delivering, because there's sort of a plethora of benefits all the way down to sort of environmental and biodiverse benefits as a result of the works we're looking to do.
Thanks very much. We have had a comment about the sort of extra visitors in this location. It's going to be a nightmare. We'll take that general comment on board from the individual that made it. The question at the end of that submission is, if planning permission is granted, would you consider contributing to the boundary fence wall between Knightsport and your proposed site? Unless there's a substantive answer, I say we'd take that one away and come back as well.
Probably nothing I can answer Bradley, I don't know if you were able to.
Yeah, no, I mean, the site's in a bit of a state of disrepair at the moment, so we're looking to improve on that and make it a much more approachable place. So we'll obviously consider all things like that.
Right. And then just scrolling down, what's the mix of homes proposed, Mark, across both of the sites, or Henry, in terms of ones, twos, threes, studios? What's the sort of balance that you're looking for?
So at the moment, it's all a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units, focusing really on evidence that London Borough of Bromley has published in terms of where local housing need lies, and it is very squarely in that sort of range for the smaller 1 and 2 bedroom flats. So we're focusing on that specifically.
Right. Okay. And then this is in terms of the delivery of the residential element of the scheme. What's the plan in terms of the question is, will the housing development be undertaken by Fennies or another party, subject obviously to receiving a planning consent? If that does happen, what would the proposal be in terms of delivery? Maybe Bradley, you might want to take that one, or Mark, either way.
Yeah. So Fennies parent company has a long track record of delivery of both commercial properties for the nurseries and then also residential schemes. So yes, at this moment in time, we are looking to retain the site and develop it out ourselves.
Okay, thank you very much. Mark, one for you. What is your comment about the fact that the site is part of the Metropolitan Open Land, incorporating the field alongside Cater Park and the current sports bowling club site, up to now fiercely protected by the council as non-residential?
Yeah, sure. So obviously, yes, the site is designated Metropolitan Open Land, and it's something that we've been discussing at length with the London Borough of Bromley. The key point here is that the site is previously developed. You have well over 50% of the site, I think, covered in either building footprint or hard standing, and the planning policy position is that the redevelopment of previously developed land in the MOL is appropriate. So that's where the policy starts. The other factor here, of course, as I mentioned a little while ago, is the fact that Bromley doesn't have a 5-year housing land supply, and so the housing policies in the local plan are out of date, and there's a presumption in favour of granting planning permission for schemes that deliver housing. So the policy context is very different now to that which one might read in a local plan itself, but actually the specific details of the situation at the moment in Bromley mean that the development of the front part of the site and for housing is something that can come forward.
Okay, great. We're starting to get through and come to the end of the questions. There are some general contributions that have been made in the Q&A, which is absolutely fine, which we'll obviously pick up and report on as part of the process. Questions been asked: why are trees and greenery considered an overgrown mess, and how does it complete the street scene when next to open land? I'm not sure I quite understand that question. So if the individual that submitted that one wants to retype that one, please feel free to. This is a different question about the houses opposite to the residential that's going to be on the former Bowls Club site, or the proposal for that. Will the new flats overlooking the houses opposite, will they overlook houses opposite, therefore reducing privacy, and will they impact on the light of houses opposite? So question around privacy, overlooking, and rights of light. Again, Henry, maybe that's one for you.
Yeah, I think we had a similar concern yesterday, and Mark might be able to answer from a planning point of view, but essentially we're the same distance away than all the other buildings along the street. There's no particular increased. There shouldn't be any overlooking problem, and there's also sort of trees along. There's a big distance. There's the road. There's front gardens from both sites. We don't anticipate there's any overlooking. And in terms of the sort of right of light and daylight, I think Mark might be better answering that from a planning perspective.
Yeah, we've had a link question, which is how far back from the road will the flats be? So you're saying effectively it's sort of very similar to the other properties.
We've deliberately got exactly the same setback as the rest of the street, so that it's sort of within its context. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. We follow the existing building line established by the block of flats immediately to the west of the site. So the front-to-front separation across Kings Hall Road is identical to that which exists from the block of flats next door to the houses opposite. So no difference there. And as Henry said, I think we've got the existing and enhanced tree screening across the front, which will further help to sort of filter views and protect privacy both ways. In terms of the daylight sunlight impacts, we've got daylight sunlight advisors who are looking at the proposed building. They've undertaken a survey of surrounding buildings, identified where there are windows serving habitable rooms, and they will calculate the impact of the development on daylight sunlight amenity within those properties. So as part of the future planning application, we will present that and present the findings of that survey for consideration. But I think, sat here now, we're very confident there's not going to be any unacceptable impact whatsoever.
Okay, thank you. There's a couple of questions on the trees on the access road to the right as you enter into the site, and whether they're going to remain. So the question was, will all the trees along the blue roads, blue in sort of parentheses, which refers to this, be retained on the site, or what's the plan with the existing trees here?
Right. I think again, this comes back to the arboricultural survey that we've had done, and we'll get advice on. But we're looking to. There may be one or two trees that are not allowing the access to have a double access, which is a sort of two-way access, which is what we'll need to solve the sort of transport challenge that we've got with this nursery and the development. But what I can say is that the number of new trees that we're planting will outweigh any trees that need to be removed to allow the development to take place. I think that's the short answer, but I don't have any particular figures for you at this stage.
Okay, that's one definitely to report back on in that case. And again, transport related, there's one resident says there's a pinch point the crossing outside the front of the development. Is that going to remain?
Again, I think that's a transport question, and we can come back on that just in terms of how the highway is operating. We're not aware from the pre-application discussions that we've had with the borough or advice from the transport consultant that there is any particular highways issue at the moment in terms of the ability of Kings Hall Road to function properly without congestion. But it's all being considered and discussed, and obviously we can come back and look at this in more detail.
And Mark, just on construction management, whilst we've got the board here as well, one of the last couple of questions are relating to that. There's one question which, what will the impact of construction traffic be, and where will the turning points be? That might be quite specific at the moment, but related to that, we've had a sort of comment which was, on a site of this sort, how many trucks would there be expected on any normal day of construction across both the nursery and the residential? It might be too granular at the moment, but can you give us a sort of insight, if you can, as to how the construction tends to operate on a site like this? Yeah,
of course. I mean, in terms of delivery frequencies, that's not something I can really answer at this stage, but obviously it's something we can provide some updates on that. That's absolutely fine. Deliveries. So the construction logistics plan will define the delivery routes that drivers have to take, and it'll be built into the construction contracts for whichever contractor undertakes the works. So they'll have to access a site in a certain way and via a certain route. They will then enter the site to either collect whatever it is that's being collected, or to unload. They'll be able to turn within the site and come back out in a forward gear. So we wanted to completely minimize, if not entirely avoid, any situation where you have construction vehicles on the highway itself queuing on the road. We want to get them onto the site as quickly as possible. Things like wheel washing facilities, etc., can be looked at being provided. There'll be banksmen provided to make sure that the vehicles enter and exit safely. and to just ensure the free flow of traffic along the road, to ensure the road doesn't get clogged up with mud, etc., just so that it's managed as efficiently and in as pain-free a way as possible.
Okay, great. And the final one that I've got untagged, and if anybody feels that they haven't put their question, please do feel free to type it in. I will put it to the team. Do you think that the conjoined applications, so that the two sites together, will enable you to circumvent the metropolitan open land restrictions, which were an issue for the previous application? Sort of address that, Mark, but why not comment on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the conjoining of the applications has no impact whatsoever on the MOL point. Yeah, I've covered the MOL policy points a short while ago, but linking the two applications doesn't alter the policy position from that perspective at all.
Okay. Nobody seems to have submitted any additional questions. I'm going to review all of these afterwards to make sure that anything that wasn't picked up. I'm pretty sure I've clicked on everything now. And there's nothing that's come in. So I am going to bring proceedings to a conclusion for this evening, and just thank everybody who has attended. Had a really good turnout tonight. Lots of questions, some bits for us to take away, to review and come back to you on. As I said at the start of the session, we will be uploading a recording of this to the website in the next couple of days, which is kingsfallroadconsultation.co.uk. These information boards will also be going online, and there will be a feedback form for people to complete, to return to us, that we will process as part of the application feedback into the project team. And we'll also be uploading an FAQ on any of the issues that we need to resolve this evening. So Bradley, Mark, Henry, thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you to everybody that came out, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.